The 17th birthday for most high school teenagers usually signifies freedom, driver's licenses, and simple celebrations with close friends. For Nara, however, the day began with an oppressive, suffocating heat that seemed to radiate from deep inside her own bones. Throughout the tedious morning lectures, an unbearable burning sensation steadily intensified along the left side of her neck. When the final school bell resonated through the corridors, she rushed directly to the restroom to inspect her reflection. There, glowing with a faint, malevolent crimson hue beneath her skin, were 3 distinct, perfectly aligned dots. Dismissing the strange marks as a bizarre allergic reaction, she quickly gathered her heavy backpack and left the school building behind. The bustling city streets of Seoul felt uncharacteristically distorted and warped as she walked toward the crowded intersection. Strange, ghostly whispers seemed to echo directly into her mind, chanting ancient words she could not comprehend. Suddenly, the traffic signals at the busy intersection malfunctioned simultaneously, flashing a chaotic sequence of blinding lights. Out of the darkness, a massive city bus swerved violently off course, its headlights glowing with an unnatural spectral blue flame. Nara froze directly in the center of the crosswalk, her legs completely paralyzed by a sudden wave of supernatural pressure. Just milliseconds before the catastrophic impact, a powerful hand gripped her arm and yanked her backward with superhuman force. The spectral bus crashed violently into an invisible barrier where she had stood, dissolving instantly into a cloud of black mist. Tumbled onto the hard concrete sidewalk, Nara looked up gasping for air to find her savior standing tall above her. It was Gun-woo, the notoriously quiet and aloof boy who occupied the desk directly behind her in homeroom. His sharp amber eyes glowed with a faint, predatory intensity that definitely did not belong to an ordinary human being. He extended his arm toward her, revealing faint, glowing blue electrical sparks dancing playfully across his scarred knuckles. Without uttering a single word of explanation, he hoisted her up, threw her over his shoulder, and ran into the shadows. Nara screamed and thrashed violently against his back, demanding to know what kind of insane prank was happening. Gun-woo ignored her entirely, moving with incredible agility as he vaulted over tall fences and ascended concrete walls. They finally arrived at the traditional gates of a surprisingly massive hidden estate nestled deep within the modern city outskirts. Nara backed away cautiously, her heart hammering against her ribs as she clutched her still-burning neck mark tightly. Gun-woo pushed open the heavy wooden doors, revealing a sprawling traditional Korean estate courtyard that felt utterly frozen in time. Before Nara could even ask another question, a massive, giant white wolf bounded out from the main building toward them. The gargantuan beast skidded to a halt, stood upright on its hind legs, and suddenly transformed into a middle-aged woman. Wearing a floral cooking apron over her traditional clothes, the woman greeted Gun-woo with an enthusiastic, bone-crushing hug. She turned her bright, cheerful gaze toward Nara, welcoming her warmly to the household with an energetic wave. From the dark corners of the wooden ceiling beams above, 2 young children with literal furry gray tails peeked down curiously. The young boy and girl snarled playfully at Nara before dropping down to scramble around Gun-woo's legs like puppies. A stern, muscular man with a massive scar across his face emerged from the dining room holding a spatula. He scolded the young children in a deep, booming voice that literally caused the sliding paper panels to rattle loudly. Nara blinked repeatedly, convinced that the near-death experience from the traffic accident had finally driven her completely insane. Gun-woo walked past her into the living room, casually tossing his school bag onto a nearby leather sofa. He gestured for her to sit down at a low wooden table where a massive feast was currently laid out. The mother placed a steaming bowl of traditional soup directly in front of Nara, her eyes narrowing with sudden ancient insight. She noted that the lethal fox curse of the ancient Dangun legends had officially awakened within Nara's human bloodstream. Nara trembled as she realized these bizarre people actually possessed genuine knowledge about the terrifying condition threatening her life. Gun-woo explained that other ancient beast clans disguised across the city would soon hunt her down for her power. To survive the upcoming onslaught, she would have to rely completely on the protection of his supernatural wolf family. Suddenly, a violent, explosive shockwave shattered all the glass windows of the estate, plunging the entire house into absolute darkness. The absolute darkness of the ruined estate suffocated Nara as heavy dust cascaded from the fractured ceiling. A violent, unnatural vortex materialized in the center of the living room, pulling both teenagers into its swirling purple vortex. Nara screamed as her boots left the floor, her body spinning uncontrollably into the spatial rift. Gun-Woo lunged forward through the debris, his hand locking tightly around Nara's wrist with supernatural strength. The world inverted with a sickening crunch, dropping both teenagers hard onto a cold metallic floor. Nara pushed herself up on trembling hands, realizing the surrounding structure resembled their high school but lacked any exits. Gun-Woo stood up instantly, stepping in front of her as his nostrils flared to catch an incoming scent. Dozens of other terrified high school students suddenly materialized across the arena floor, weeping and shouting in confusion. High above the gym floor on a raised iron balcony, a grotesque human-sized rat creature clad in a tattered royal robe appeared. The Rat King raised his clawed hands, his high-pitched scratching voice echoing perfectly through everyone's minds. He announced that only the survivors of this specialized hunting game would be permitted to return to the real world. Suddenly, the reinforced iron floor tiles began to shift and slide apart, revealing deep pits filled with spikes below. Panic erupted instantly as students began shoving each other into the voids to secure solid footing. Gun-Woo grabbed two falling students by their collars, slinging them onto a stable platform with a dark scowl. Nara felt the three-dot fox mark on her neck burn intensely, a sudden surge of spectral energy flowing into her veins. A glowing bow composed of pure ethereal light manifested directly into her outstretched hands. From the shadows of the arena walls, hundreds of mutated red-eyed dire rats surged forward like a tidal wave. Pulling the ethereal bowstring back, Nara manifested a brilliant light arrow and aimed at the incoming swarm. The released arrow split into dozens of tracking homing beams, obliterating the front line of monsters in flashes of light. The sudden drain of energy forced Nara to her knees, the luminous bow flickering violently in her grip. A massive alpha rat leaped from a high pipe, its dripping jaws aiming directly for her exposed shoulder. Gun-Woo intercepted the beast mid-air, slamming it into the ground with enough force to crack the iron plating. The Rat King laughed hysterically from his high perch, waving his staff to command more beasts to target Nara specifically. Human bonds shattered completely as desperate students began pulling Nara backward to use her as a shield. Gun-Woo witnessed the betrayal, his eyes instantly shifting into a brilliant predatory neon blue color. A low, deep growl vibrated from his chest, causing the aggressive students to freeze in absolute terror. The entire gymnasium began to tilt violently, sliding the remaining survivors toward a central vortex of crushing iron gears. Nara lost her footing entirely, sliding down the smooth metal incline directly toward the grinding machinery. Gun-Woo realized the only way to save her was to fully break the mystical seals binding his true heritage. He roared toward the ceiling as arcs of crackling blue electricity exploded outward from his body. Nara watched in awe as a gigantic spectral blue shadow of a wolf manifested directly behind him. Thick silver fur erupted along his arms, and his hands morphed into massive, lethal wolf claws. Moving faster than human eyes could track, the fully unleashed wolfkin jumped across the chasm to catch Nara. Gun-Woo slammed his giant claws into the vertical metal wall, anchoring them safely above the mechanical death trap. He glared up at the distant balcony where the Rat King stood, unleashing a shockwave roar that shattered the remaining steel supports. The Rat King's smug expression instantly vanished, his whiskers twitching violently as the structural foundations began to fail. Nara leaned into Gun-Woo's chest, feeling the terrifying but strangely protective warmth of his beast form. With a powerful leg spring, Gun-Woo launched them upward toward the fracturing ceiling to escape the collapsing pocket dimension. Before they could reach the exit, a giant, multi-eyed shadow silhouette blocked their path, sealing the breach completely. Gravity reclaimed them as the massive entity roared, sending both teenagers tumbling backward into the inescapable darkness below. The cold abyss rushed upward to swallow Lee Nara and Nam Gun-Woo as they plummeted away from the crumbling school arena. Nara hit the damp stone ground with a heavy thud, the breath completely leaving her lungs upon impact. She pushed herself up onto her elbows, coughing violently as the smell of ancient rot filled her nose. Thick, pulsating spiderwebs coated the towering stone pillars around her, stretching into the dark ceiling like a canopy of cocoons. Suddenly, a series of bright tactical flares burst overhead, illuminating the cavern with harsh white light. Heavy footsteps echoed from the eastern corridors as heavily armed supernatural military operatives breached the temple walls. Automated rifle fire began to echo through the space, shredding through waves of giant, skittering shadow spiders. Nara turned her head frantically, searching the immediate chaos for any sign of her companion. A few yards away, Gunwoo stood on all fours, a thick, low growl vibrating violently within his chest. His transformation had advanced further, with sharp claws tearing through his fingernails and blue electricity dancing wildly across his skin. Nara called out his name, but his feral blue eyes remained locked onto the center of the temple where the ground was cracking open. From the splitting earth, a colossal, corrupted presence ascended, wrapped in swirling winds of black miasma. It was the corrupted deity Pung Bayek, its ancient, decayed ceremonial armor rattling with every step it took. The corrupted god unleashed a deafening shriek that sent a shockwave of razor-sharp wind slicing across the chamber. Several military squads were instantly thrown backward, their heavy ballistic shields shattering like fragile glass. Nara realized that the regular forces stood no chance against the raw mythic power of an ancient god. With a primal roar that shook the very foundation of the caverns, Gunwoo launched himself forward like a streak of blue lightning. He collided directly with Pung Bayek, his sharp claws digging deep into the deity's decayed armor plates. The god struck back with a heavy, multi-limbed blow that smashed Gunwoo directly into a nearby stone pillar. Nara knew she couldn't stay hidden any longer, forcing herself to stand tall despite her trembling legs. She concentrated on the lethal fox curse inside her, transforming the destructive poison into a beautiful spectral bow. She pulled back the glowing energy string, creating a brilliant arrow of concentrated spiritual light. Nara loosed the arrow, which streaked through the air and pierced Pung Bayek right in his glowing crimson eye. The corrupted deity recoiled in agonizing pain, its dark miasma flaring violently as its focus was completely disrupted. Seizing the opening, Gunwoo scrambled out of the rubble, but his posture was now completely monstrous and devoid of reason. A massive spectral shadow of a giant wolf materialized behind him, howling soundlessly into the cavern ceiling. He was no longer distinguishing friend from foe, lashing out at the surrounding military vehicles and stone walls alike. Nara realized that if she didn't act quickly, his humanity would be permanently devoured by the primal wolf spirit. Throwing away her weapon, she ran directly into the path of the rampaging wolf boy, disregarding her own safety. Gunwoo raised his massive, lightning-infused claw, poised to strike down the figure approaching him. Instead of running, Nara stepped inside his guard and wrapped her arms tightly around his neck, pressing her face against his shoulder. The 5,000-year-old fox curse on her neck flared, sending warm, soothing, golden energy directly into his chaotic aura. Slowly, the wild silver hair began to recede, and the terrifying claws shrank back into human hands. Gunwoo's eyes blinked open, regaining their clear human clarity as he looked down at Nara holding him. With their powers perfectly synchronized, a massive shockwave of pure divine light erupted outwards from the pair. The divine light completely vaporized the corrupted deity Pung Bayek, turning his dark miasma into harmless, sparkling dust. The surrounding shadow spiders shriveled away into nothingness, leaving the ancient temple completely purified and silent. The military operatives lowered their weapons, watching in awe as the divine conflict concluded without further casualties. Gunwoo smiled softly, leaning his forehead against Nara's as the ancient relics of Dangun stabilized within them. Walking out of the underground caverns hand in hand, they stepped into the warm morning sun, ready to face their new shared destiny together.